This is our third video on Jeremiah this month, and it's just to focus in on Jeremiah personally. He's often called the weeping prophet, and he suffers so much, and it does raise that question: how do we see ourselves? So often we suffer in life. Why is that? Well, with Jeremiah and with us, it's because, so much of it is because we are connected to Jesus. Jesus is God's Son. And yet when he came into the world, people were not willing to listen to him, not willing to receive him. They accused him, they lied about him, and he had so much suffering to go through. But it was God who had the final say, saying, "This is my Son with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." So Jeremiah suffered just like Jesus because he wasn't listened to. Again and again you'll read in Jeremiah Jesus saying, "They haven't listened, I've spoken, I've reminded them again and again, they just haven't listened, the church were just not listening." Jeremiah had a taste of that sort of verbal and mental suffering where people accused him of lying, of not speaking God's words, just like they did with Jesus. And it was so hard. In fact, in one of the chapters, the king literally sits there with the book of Jeremiah, the scroll of Jeremiah that Jesus has told him to write down, all of his words, and every third or fourth line he cuts it off and throws it in the fire to be forgotten like it's never been spoken. That's the desperate state it had gotten to. That's what people thought of Jesus' words. They weren't worth listening to, they weren't even worth remembering at all. And Jeremiah suffered with that. And in one place he says, "Lord, your word has brought me nothing but trouble all day long." And he sort of has a moment where, should I stop saying it? But the moment he stops delivering Jesus' words, the more it burns in his heart. And he can't help himself. He's got to carry on speaking Jesus' words. And what does Jesus say to Jeremiah after the king has burnt all these books and words? He says, "Write them out again." And this is our comfort. No matter how you're treated verbally or mentally for speaking Jesus' words, take comfort. Don't give up. Just because other people throw them away and don't want to listen, Jesus says it doesn't mean his words disappear. He writes them out again, and they stand forever. No matter what people think or say, you receive comfort from them. You receive life from them. Keep holding on to what Jesus has said. No matter how everyone else treats him, you love him and you'll receive the comfort of his words. But it's not just verbal or mental suffering that Jeremiah has to go through for Jesus. It gets physical too. People start shouting for him to be put to death. Remember the shouts against Jesus, "Crucify him, crucify him." He gets beaten up. He gets put in the stocks overnight to be laughed at. He gets mocked. He gets thrown into prison. He gets confined in the courtyard. He gets thrown into a well and sinks up to his waist in mud. It's desperate, and he nearly dies. He pleads with the king at one point, "Please let me eat something or I will die." It's painful following Jesus. And yet, what is Jesus' answer when we suffer? Listen to what he says in chapter 33. "For this is what the Lord says, David will never fail to have a man sit on the throne of the house of Israel, nor will the priests ever fail to have a man to stand before me continually to offer burnt offerings, to burn grain offerings, and to present sacrifices." Jeremiah's suffering was tied in with Jesus' suffering. And Jesus wants us to remember, no matter how bad things get, he is always stood in the center of the universe. No matter how much we sin, no matter how much we turn against him, to offer himself to God so that we can be forgiven. That's what Jesus wanted to remind the people in Jeremiah's time. How amazingly gracious is that? You haven't listened to me. You've hated me. You've roared at me. You've burnt my words. You've mistreated me. And yet I am willing to offer myself so you can still be saved. He wanted them to know no matter how bad it got, they still had hope, and he would pay gladly for their sins. they would just turn to him and live. Jeremiah, in that pain, was to remember he was looking like Jesus, and as he suffered, he was reminded how much Jesus had to suffer for him. And even though he was in pain, he thought that if just one person turns to Jesus, it'll all be worth it.